I am a beta residing within the realm of ABO. Yes, indeed, I am the one roused in the dead of night by a domineering alpha CEO, summoned to his opulent mansion to tend to the unspoken wounds of his delicate Omega canary. Moreover, I also assumed the role of butler, addressing each Omega with the remark, I have never before witnessed Mr. Gu bring anyone home. You are indeed the first. As anticipated, the little Omega immediately revealed a bashful smile. Yet, this particular canary is somewhat different. He cast aside the CEO's check onto the floor, as if affronted, declaring, I do not want your money. If he desires not for wealth, then surely he seeks love? Gu Shang, slightly exasperated, retorted sharply, if you don't want money, then be gone. Tears instantly welled in the canary's eyes as he choked out, Gu Shang, I am pregnant. 01. Wow, someone has lost their life. My movements slowed as I began to eavesdrop on the gossip. Gu Shang displayed no joy at the prospect of fatherhood. His face was clouded with darkness. I've been taking precautions. Pregnant? Whose illegitimate child is this? The canary looked up in disbelief. Gu Shang, do you have a heart? I bear your temporary mark every day. Who else could I possibly? Gu Shang interrupted him. Either terminate it or leave. I do not wish to be distracted in bed. After uttering those words, Gu Shang walked away without a backward glance. The canary appeared to be experiencing the coldness of the CEO for the first time. His face drained of color, trembling uncontrollably. I sighed and picked up the check, placing it beside him, wishing to offer some advice, but recalling the unfolding narrative. Never mind. Let us respect others' destinies and set aside the urge to assist. This is an ancient ABO novel, primarily focused on a scoundrel pursuing a contemptible recipient through a fiery ordeal. The male leads are Gu Shang and Xin Yu, with Xin Yu being the aforementioned canary. After enduring infidelity, abandonment, pregnancy-related assault, miscarriage, and several stints in the ICU, he still forgives Gu Shang, marrying him and bearing him triplets, living a life of pampered indulgence. As for me, I am but a sacrificial victim, shot down by Gu Shang due to Xin Yu's jealousy. Upon awakening, my first course of action was to swiftly sever ties with Gu Shang and immediately study abroad. It was only recently that I returned. Descending the stairs, I spotted Gu Shang smoking in the courtyard. The smoke enveloped his chiseled features, and in that hazy moment, I was transported back to the time when he declared that I was his favorite, Ah Su. How is he? Ultimately, he is the fated one. Gu Shang still cares. I smiled gently. He is physically well, but his emotions might be. Gu Shang's expression darkened again. What a nonsensical remark. How dreary. Omega's fragility requires more coaxing, I suggested. The typically unyielding CEO, accustomed to being pampered by others, snorted dismissively. He is the only one by my side now. Have I not done enough for him? What a grand sacrifice. I concealed my amusement and continued to persuade. Do not be angry. Shall we go out for a drink?
Gu Shang de meno sopten somewhat. Asu.
You are always the best. In the bar, Gu Shang summoned a group of rowdy friends. They made no effort to conceal their personal matters. One suggested to Gu Shang, if the Omega keeps crying and making a scene, why not consider a beta? No sensitive periods, stable emotions, and most importantly, the speaker's expression turned meaningful. Good physical health, and they won't get pregnant. The implication was clear. They could engage freely. Gu Shang froze momentarily, instinctively glancing at me. The speaker, realizing my presence, awkwardly chuckled. Xin Gu, that was not my intention. I adjusted my glasses, unconcerned, and replied, not a problem. However, the atmosphere had undeniably cooled. I stood up, saying, I will go to the bar to get a drink. As I turned, the atmosphere behind me heated up again. My keen ears caught their conversation. But honestly, Xin Gu is tall and long-legged, dressed in a suit, utterly alluring. Gu Zong, have you never had any thoughts? A flower on a high peak. If it weren't so difficult to pursue at first glance, I would want to give it a try. Forget it. I just sat next to him and couldn't even breathe, best admired from a distance. At the bar, I ordered a low-alcohol fruit cocktail and sipped it slowly alone. When Gu Shang approached, I was engaged in conversation with a well-built alpha. The alpha took my hand to feel his well-defined abs, and I playfully lifted his shirt to take a peek. Then I looked up and smiled at him. The alpha, eager to hold my hand, was shoved away by Gu Shang. Get lost. The alpha was about to get angry when Gu Shang released his S-level pheromones to assert dominance. In the end, the other party left, pale and unwilling. I sat quietly, saying nothing. Ah Su, if you wish to date, I can. Gu Sheng paused. I can introduce you. The people in the bar are not reputable, who knows where they come from. I laughed to the point of tears, resting my hand on Gu Sheng's shoulder. My dear Gu Zong, how is it that you are even criticizing yourself? I leaned in closer, and Gu Sheng caught a whiff of another scent. Not the aggressively potent pheromones, but rather the gentle aroma of agarwood. It was soft and harmless yet carried an air of unattainability, provoking a desire to conquer. Gu Sheng appeared momentarily entranced. After I had my fill of laughter, I continued, Gu Zong, I prefer well-built individuals. My gaze roamed over his waist and abdomen. At least someone comparable to you. I need not glance in a mirror to know my appearance now. My eyes slightly reddened, exuding both chill and allure. I had practiced this hundreds of times at home, unafraid of Gu Sheng's indifference. Gu Sheng's grip on his glass tightened, and with a swift motion, he pulled me closer by my waist. 02. Plop. A light sound, which would normally go unheard, was accentuated by the bar's brief moment of silence as the music changed. Gu Sheng and I turned our heads simultaneously to see Xinyu, who had appeared out of nowhere, tears cascading down his cheeks like pearls. His pure white shirt glimmered under the dim bar lights, rendering him strikingly beautiful. Gu Sheng, I hate you. Xunyu's eyes brimmed with disappointment and anguish as he stumbled toward the exit. I nudged Gu Sheng's waist. Hurry and chase after him. This place is full of unsavory characters, and his pheromones are still unstable. Could attract the wrong sort. Gu Sheng snapped out of his reverie and dashed after him. With the target gone, my interest waned. I did not bother to bid farewell to Gu Sheng's rowdy friends and left alone. Upon returning home, I opened the door to find a tall figure standing on the balcony in the living room. The tension in my shoulders, which had just relaxed, immediately stiffened again. Hearing the sound, the figure turned, his cold and profound features seeming to be dusted with frost. Upon seeing me, his expression transformed into an invisible arrow of ice, sharp and intimidating. I was unsure how I had offended him again, so frightened that I did not even change my shoes. I stood straight, my hand obediently pressed against the seam of my pants, and greeted, brother. Shinkei regarded me for 2 seconds before responding softly, His voice, tinged with a low, husky timbre, resonated with the night. After a moment of waiting to ensure he had nothing further to say, I lowered my head to change my shoes. Brother, you're still awake at this hour? Shinkei lifted a glass of water to his lips, not answering me. Well then, I'll head to my room. Shinkei gently set down the glass, the sound of glass meeting marble ringing crisply in the night. He said, I have no intention of prying into your private life. But remember to cleanse the alpha pheromones before your next return. A rush of blood surged to my face in an instant. Private life, alpha, pheromones, what did Shinkei mean? I took a deep breath and managed to smile as I turned. I had a couple of drinks with Gu Sheng today. It might have been during that time. I'm not interested, Shinkei replied, turning to ascend the stairs from the other side. I felt a lump in my throat, nearly choking. While soaking in the bathtub, I heard the roar of Shinkei's sports car, realizing he had gone out, and my breath finally eased. The tension in my shoulders dissipated, and I gradually sank deeper into the water. Shinkei and I were likely akin to half-brothers vying for inheritance, a tale of estranged kin stepping into the family fold. However, while it is said to be a struggle for the family inheritance, it remains merely my unilateral perception. Shinkei has never regarded me with any significance. This neglect is not akin to the disregard shown by Gu Sheng due to the dynamics of ABO gender. Rather, it emanates from a position of absolute power and intellect, viewing an inconvenient object with disdain. Most of our generation relies on the prestige and influence of our families. Shinkei, however, stands apart. He is already capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with, if not surpassing, the previous generation. He is rational, composed, ruthless, and proud. Among the younger generation, few possess the audacity to rival him. I am terrified of him to the core. While other alphas may merely seek to toy with my emotions and body, I sense that Shinkei on a whim might play with my very life. Perhaps even my mother's life as well. For many days thereafter, as if deliberately avoiding me, I received no calls from Gu Sheng. Instead, I heard through others that he had found a new love interest, a beta of cool, refined demeanor. Asu, you have no idea. Gu Sheng is practically prostrating himself before his new partner, eager to pluck the stars from the sky for him. A mutual friend came to gossip. Is that so? I replied with a smile, has Gu Sheng found true love? You'll find out tomorrow if it's true love. 7 o'clock at the Dihao Hotel. Don't miss it. Gu Shang was hosting a soiree at the Dihao Hotel, primarily to introduce the beta into the social circle. Due to his family background, nearly everyone sought to engage him in conversation, yet he only entertained those with whom he shared a closer rapport. Thus, the guests turned their attention to his new beau, the aloof and proud beta. As I entered, Gu Shang's assistant discreetly alerted him. Those nearby turned to glance my way. Upon recognizing my face, many gasped in surprise. Some, unable to mask their intrigue, openly scrutinized the beta's expression. Gu Shang, likely unaware of my arrival, instinctively positioned himself in front of the beta, obstructing my view. "Asu, what brings you here?" I clinked a glass of champagne against his. "Shall I take my leave?" As I raised my glass, I caught a clear glimpse of the beta's face. Quite striking, resembling mine by about 50%. If not for the pallor, it could easily be 60%. "Hello, young Master Zhou, I am Shinsu, a childhood friend of Gu Shang." Zhou Ruan's gaze was fixed upon me, his grip on the wine glass tightening to the point of whitening knuckles. Those recently slighted by Zhou Ruan began to murmur. How amusing. He was so arrogant just now. Yet it seems he merely basked in someone else's glow. How dare a mere substitute flaunt themselves? Now that the original has arrived, they can't muster a word. The second son of the Shin family, radiant and resplendent. How could a counterfeit possibly compare? I feigned ignorance, my eyes sparkling as I leaned closer to Gu Shang. In a hushed tone, just loud enough for Zhou Ruan to overhear, I mused. How is it that he resembles me so closely? For a moment, I almost thought my mother had given birth to twins. Gu Shang was suddenly pulled away, and in swift succession, a forceful slap landed across my face. I recoiled a step, yet still felt the sting of nails grazing my chin. Blood trickled down my neck, and I winced, prompting Gu Shang to react. "Asu, Gu Shang, don't you dare approach him," Zhou Ruan shouted, tears in his eyes as he tugged at Gu Shang, who retaliated with equal force, delivering a blow back to Zhou Ruan. The strength of an S-rank alpha is not something a beta can contend with. Zhou Ruan's teeth were knocked loose. "Get lost. I don't want to see you again." I stepped forward, grasping Gu Shang's hand, my tone gentle. "Shang, please don't be angry. I'm fine." Zhou Ruan's glare was one of pure malice, as if he wished to slay me. This debacle swiftly made headlines, trending fervently within our circle. Coupled with the fact that Gu Shang was photographed gifting me a car as an apology, many began speculating whether something significant was brewing between us. I smiled and denied it, yet Gu Shang's ambiguous demeanor left the matter unresolved. He would often casually wrap an arm around my waist during the event. Many assumed my reticence was mere modesty, igniting discussions about my past with Gu Shang. They claimed Gu Shang had turned over a new leaf. Back in school, you ignored everyone, only playing with Gu Shang. If you hadn't gone abroad, would there have been any other flings? My mother called. "You and Gu Shang are a perfect match, childhood sweethearts finally coming together." "Mom, why are you joining in the rumors?" I felt a headache coming on. "Your father knows too. He even asked when you would bring him to meet Gu Shang. We haven't even begun." I sat on the sofa in the living room when Shin-Kei unexpectedly returned home. I quickly shifted the subject. "That depends on Shang's intentions. I hope I'm not just chasing a one-sided affection." Shin-Kei turned his head, and I shyly smiled at him, as if my thoughts had been overheard, tinged with a hint of bashfulness. "Brother, you're back." My mother, upon hearing me address Shin-Kei, promptly ended the call. Shin-Kei was removing his outerwear, and I eagerly approached to assist him in hanging it on the rack. He, however, showed no hesitation, letting go and bending down to change his shoes. "Dad wants us to visit him tomorrow." "All right." Once Shin-Kei finished changing, he stood upright but did not leave. I looked up in confusion, the overhead light casting a long shadow behind him, his imposing alpha stature entirely eclipsing my form. Shin-Kei seemed to have consumed some alcohol. The scent of his breath, a mix of herbal notes with a hint of spice, wafted up to my collar. I lowered my voice. "Brother, have you been drinking?" Shin-Kei's hand found my chin, applying a gentle pressure that prompted me to obediently lift my gaze. His cool eyes fell upon the scratch left by Zhou Ruan's nails. "Brother, it's just a minor wound. It has already healed." Shin-Kei released his grip, letting out an ambiguous chuckle as he bypassed me and retreated to his room. I raised my hand to touch the spot he had just caressed, sensing that he had something to say to me, only to wonder why he had seemingly changed his mind. "Shinji is our father, Shin-Kei's and mine. He suffers from pheromone disorder syndrome. This affliction is not fatal but causes a once robust alpha to experience muscle atrophy. rendering them unable to release pheromones, gradually transforming them into a state of mediocrity they abhor. The severity can leave them weaker than the most delicate omega. This is more excruciating than death itself. Shinji appeared to have tidied himself up. He seemed in good spirits. He and Shinkei discussed matters regarding the corporation, while my mother, ever the gossip, inquired about my relationship with Gu Shang. Their conversation briefly paused, and seizing the moment, I interjected, "I'm still pursuing him." Gu Shang's reputation. My mother hesitated, sensing it inappropriate to speak ill of the younger generation, before continuing. "But if things remain so ambiguous, you must make a decision." She affectionately tousled my hair. "Our little Sue deserves nothing but the best." I clasped her hand. "Mom, I understand." During lunch, Shinji finally broached the main topic. "Okay. I wish to have Xiao Su join the board of directors." My heart skipped a beat, and I turned to glance at my mother. Her bewildered expression mirrored my own. Shinkei appeared to have not heard, continuing to enjoy his meal. Shinji repeated himself, prompting Shinkei to abruptly drop his chopsticks. The Shin family adheres to strict etiquette. When an elder speaks, a younger member should not cease eating until permitted. My mother and I nearly wished to bury our heads in our bowls to avoid the impending fallout. Shinkei remarked, "As long as the other directors are in agreement, I have no objections. The board of directors is entirely submissive to your will. Ultimately, it is you who calls the shots." This is clearly a statement of evasion. "I am merely explaining matters to you." Shunji, having navigated the tumultuous waters of business for decades, maintained his formidable presence. "The process is your concern. I only require the results." Shinkei insisted, "The group has its regulations." Shinji retorted, "Shinkei, I am not yet dead." Shinkei refrained from countering him further, yet his gaze remained unwavering. "Well," my mother attempted to mediate, prompting me to discreetly nudge her under the table. "What place do we have in such a situation? To speak up? That would contradict Shunji's intentions. And there are countless illegitimate children waiting in line for their turn. To remain silent? That would only further offend Shinkei, leading to inevitable ruin." Yet my mother, a valiant warrior, completely failed to grasp my intent. She said, "Xiao Su is still young. Let him play for another 2 years." My heavens, was she not coveting the power in his hands? Shinkei's cold, unfeeling gaze immediately fell upon me. I had no choice but to speak. Dad, brother, I am still young. I cannot manage the board. You are already 21. At your age, your elder brother has firmly established himself in the group. Dad, my brother is exceptionally gifted. How can I compare? Yet, I could not disregard Shinji's face. "Dad, actually, I interviewed at our group's research institute and just received the acceptance notification yesterday." Finally, my mother found her moment. Yes, Xiao Su loves research and knows nothing of management or finance. As long as he works for Shinkei, he won't starve. Let us drop this topic. I am nearly frightened to death. Let us eat. The dishes are getting cold. Upon leaving the hospital, Shinkei immediately got into his car and departed. I rushed to pull at his car door. Brother, I truly had no knowledge of what Dad said today. Please do not be angry. I entered the research institute through the proper channels, and I won't disclose my identity to trouble you in the future. Brother, please don't be angry. Shinkei's anger had not dissipated. He instructed his assistant to pry my hand away and drove off. I stood there with misty eyes until his car faded from view, fully embodying a humble demeanor. "Second young master, shall I hail a cab for you?" Shinkei's assistant, Jiang Sun, comfortingly patted my shoulder. I was about to respond when I was interrupted. "Su?" It was Gu Shang. His expression was somewhat awkward. My gaze dropped slightly, and Gu Shang hurriedly released the omega he had been holding. A flicker of sadness crossed my eyes, but I quickly masked it, once again wearing a gentle smile. "Is this your boyfriend?" "Yes, quite handsome." The omega, who had initially glared, now appeared somewhat bashful. Gu Shang cleared his throat, attempting to conceal his discomfort. "Has President Shin informed you?" "Informed me of what?" Jiang Sun leaned in and whispered in my ear. "At last night's banquet, President Shin encountered President Gu, who was on a blind date with this gentleman." It seemed Shinkei had intended to convey this. Understanding dawned upon me, and maintaining my smile became increasingly difficult. Gu Shang grew more awkward, exchanged a few casual remarks, and then took his leave. Jiang Sun swiftly uncovered the events. The rumors surrounding Gu Shang and me reached the ears of the Gu family. Not wanting an unproductive mate, they began frantically introducing omegas to Gusheng. They came to the hospital for pheromone matching. The higher the matching index, the greater the probability of producing an outstanding child of either gender. No matter the results, they aim for 80%. Generally speaking, a 70% matching is already quite rare. The Gu couple, always with lofty aspirations, would not settle for anything less than 80%, 90%, or even 100% was not out of the question. They would undoubtedly dangle this omega before Gusheng while continuing to seek a higher match. This would afford me ample time. Yes, second young master. Jiang Sun nodded. Do you need me to assist you further with your admission to the research institute? No need, just maintain our current distance. Jiang Sun opened the car door for me. All right, second young master. Take care. Once inside the car, I exhaled deeply. It was no wonder Shinji was eager to have me join the board. It was to elevate my standing, thereby enhancing my prospects for marrying into the Gu family. The Gu family is at the pinnacle of the medical industry, with a technology highly effective in treating pheromone disorder syndrome. However, they have ceased further research. As the condition affects only a minority, they are more inclined to develop a second-generation pheromone inhibitor for exorbitant profits. Shinji wished for me to engage with this topic, to forge a new path for his treatment. After some contemplation, I accessed my phone's contacts and dialed a number. Think of a way to bring Shen Yu to the Dihao Hotel this weekend. When Gusheng encountered Shen Yu again, Shen Yu was on his knees apologizing to an alpha, using his waiter's jacket to polish the alpha's shoes. The alpha, still unsatisfied, raised his foot and kicked Shen Yu. Gusheng, like a lion reclaiming its territory, rushed over to protect Shen Yu, delivering a thrashing to the alpha before enveloping Shen Yu in a comforting embrace. The omega he had brought along, intended for a romantic rendezvous, was someone I had previously dispatched with a substantial sum. Asu, please check if Shen Yu is injured. I smiled and obliged. Gusheng and Shen Yu rekindled their old flame. Yet, Gusheng's parents remained unaware and continued to introduce new omegas to him. These omegas came from prestigious backgrounds, and Gusheng was reluctant to let them go. He was simultaneously nurturing Shen Yu while entangled with the new omegas. I dutifully played the role of someone who loved him so deeply that I lost myself. I treated the omega he had harmed, spent money to dissuade those who sought to entangle him, and served as a temporary shield, making those omegas introduced by his parents believe he loved only me, thus retreating. Gusheng was living in bliss during this time. Asu, you are truly too good to me. A bittersweet smile played on my lips as I feigned indifference. I only wish for your happiness. A friend chimed in, Gusheng, why don't you just marry Asu? Asu loves you and doesn't oppose you finding someone else. With such a good character, looks, and family background, wherever Asu goes, he is cherished. If you don't appreciate him, you'll have nowhere to cry later. If it were anyone but Asu, after marriage, could you still be so carefree? Gusheng took their words to heart, and his visits to me increased. The affection in his gaze grew ever more profound. Gusheng's clandestine embrace of Shen Yu was eventually discovered by his family. Shen Yu, in despair, faced pressure from his own family onto Gusheng. The joy Gusheng once experienced now transformed into a whirlwind of stress. My goodness shone even brighter in comparison. Madame Gu and Shen Yu's attempt to conspire against me failed. After I tearfully declared I would not press charges for his sake, Gusheng's love for me reached its zenith. Asu, rest assured, I will marry you. Gusheng seemed to have just finished a heated argument with his family, his voice still tinged with anger. I soothed him over the phone. Yes, all right, I believe you. Gusheng rambled on about a multitude of things. As I listened, my patience waned, and I casually threw on some clothes and went downstairs to fetch a drink. The refrigerator was stocked with beverages that Shin-Kei loved, but I did not. I casually selected a can of lychee soda, opened it, and took a couple of sips. Gusheng had yet to conclude his thoughts. Growing weary of his discourse, I interjected, Sheng, I am well aware. I love you, and I shall wait for you. My voice flowed as gently as water, leading Gusheng to finally hang up the phone, contented. As I closed the refrigerator, my peripheral vision caught sight of Shin-Kei standing at the doorway. Unbeknownst to me, he had arrived at some point. I was taken aback, brother. I didn't realize you were home. Shin-Kei's voice bore a hint of fatigue. The cramped cold storage felt even more constricted with his presence. An inexplicable tension coursed through me as I offered, Brother, what would you like to drink? I can fetch it for you. Senke stepped inside, and I retreated 2 paces to grant him space. He seemed to have just emerged from a shower, the steam still clinging to him. illuminated by the refrigerator light. I noticed droplets of water lingering from his chin to his Adam's apple. The scent of his body wash was of iris flowers. I averted my gaze, attempting to slip away unnoticed, but inadvertently caught sight of his slightly reddened glands. Was today his sensitive period? No wonder there were hardly any servants around the house. During the sensitive period, alphas and omegas ought to avoid the presence of the opposite gender, aside from their partners. This explains why medical personnel are predominantly betas. However, one must wonder, shouldn't the sensitive periods of alphas and omegas be akin to the effects of aphrodisiacs? Why then did Shin-Kei seem entirely unfazed? He didn't even apply barrier patches. Were I an omega, I could very well accuse him of harassment. Lost in my thoughts, I failed to notice Shin-Kei snatch the lychee soda from my grasp. I hastily attempted to reclaim it. Brother, I've already had some of this. With a clang, Shin-Kei discarded the soda into the trash bin by the door. I stood dumbfounded, my hand still gripping his, momentarily forgetting to withdraw it. Through the thin silk of my nightwear, I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. My eyes clouded with confusion. My lips parted. Brother. Shin-Kei turned slightly, his gaze obscured beneath his long lashes. No matter how closely I approached, I could not decipher his emotions. His slender fingers brushed against the back of my hand as he remarked, "Taking without asking is akin to theft. Do not casually take what belongs to others." This was a veiled reprimand regarding the soda. A flicker of embarrassment crossed my features. Brother, I apologize. I lowered my gaze, displaying utmost submission. Shin-Kei brushed my hand away. That night, I filled every refrigerator in the cold storage with lychee soda. Additionally, I prepared suppressants, antipyretics, barrier patches, and curated a nutritious meal plan, brewing calming herbal tea. I even arranged for 3 willing omegas to cater to Shin-Kei's needs. Of course, he was unaware of the last arrangement. Yet, who could predict if he might suddenly desire companionship? It is always prudent to be prepared. During the critical days of his sensitive period, the few betas in the house were wary of him. For those 2 crucial days, Shin-Kei remained confined to his bedroom. I found myself rising nightly to check his temperature and tidying his room during the day. Brother, you haven't slept for 2 nights. Would you like me to fetch you some sedatives? Shin-Kei had just taken a cold shower, wrapped only in a towel at his waist, standing before the floor-to-ceiling window as he chugged ice water. Water dripped from his hair, trailing down his back to his abdomen. No need. Just give me another dose of suppressants. Shin-Kei turned his back to me as he seated himself. I took his water cup, its chilled surface almost slipping from my grasp. The suppressants will take effect soon. You shouldn't drink so much ice water, you still have a fever. Senke, with his years of training, possessed a physique that was both fluid and robust, truly captivating. Especially in his current tense state, one could scarcely imagine an omega standing in his presence. With glands aflame, I found myself curious. Brother, what does your pheromone smell like? Shin-Kei glanced at me, the corners of his eyes tinged with the allure of desire due to his sensitive period. Perhaps his pheromones were surging, as an undercurrent of darker hues seemed to rise in his gaze. He replied, "It is the scent of agarwood." On the first day following Shin-Kei's sensitive period, I finally received notice from the Research Institute to return to work. Shin-Kei was fastening his suit buttons as I stood on tiptoe, looping my hands around his neck to assist him with his tie. Once arranged, I gazed at him with bright eyes, filled with admiration. Brother, thank you. The Research Institute was filled with individuals fervently devoted to academia, who despised being called upon for matters unrelated to their research. When Director Sun learned of my extensive experience as a mentor assistant, he took a liking to bringing me along for academic exchanges and project discussions. This time, Shin-Kei was accompanying me on a business trip to America. Jong-Soon did not join us, having arranged for a new assistant. This assistant embodied the naive, sweet style of an idle protagonist, either leaving Shin-Kei's materials in disarray or spilling coffee on him. Even the simplest of supplies seemed to elude her memory. Watching Shin-Kei's growing frustration, she would merely murmur apologies, claiming it was unintentional. The other staff members, dull-witted, made no effort to intervene. I had no choice but to step in with my own blanket. Shin-Kei sat on the chair, his black suit and the blanket both stained with coffee. I bent down, "Mr. Shin, please use my blanket for now. I just picked it up from the dry cleaners today, and I haven't used it yet." At last, Shin-Kei's piercing gaze shifted from the assistant to my offering. His fingers, distinct and elegant, accepting the blanket. The assistant, as if awakening from a dream, hurriedly scrambled to tidy up after him. Upon our arrival in America, this assistant began treating me as her savior, seeking my guidance at every minor hiccup, though she still struggled to execute even the simplest tasks. When a dish garnished with cilantro arrived at Shunkei's table, I nearly fainted. It was unequivocally his most despised food. Before he could see it, I swiftly replaced it with a steak. However, it was too late. Shunkei dismissed her before we could return home. Prior to the new assistant's arrival, Director Sun had me assist Shun. Quebec Director Sun inquired, "Is everything all right with Xiao Shin?" I responded with a smile, "No problem at all." Coffee was to be 7/10 sweet. Daily materials were to be organized and sent to Shunkei's email 2 hours in advance. And at the gala, I was to follow closely behind him, reminding him of every important guest in attendance. I could discern his desires with the slightest furrow of his brow. Even the most oblivious colleagues remarked that I was determined to outshine every assistant in the organization. That evening at the networking gala, Shunkei consumed a fair amount of alcohol. I brought him a hangover soup to his room. Perhaps feeling unwell, Shunkei was seated on the sofa, rubbing his temples. I pondered briefly before returning to my room to retrieve an eye massager. "What is this?" he asked. "It is for alleviating fatigue and relaxing the mind." As I spoke, I helped him put it on. With his striking eyes obscured, my gaze fell upon the lower half of his face. "Sen que pesestaig, sculpted nose, sin lips," and a taut jawline, resembling a mixed-race model. He reclined against the sofa cushions, seemingly asleep. "What are the plans for tomorrow?" I withdrew my gaze, responding as I approached the wardrobe. "In the morning, their essay lecture, followed by a tour in the afternoon. We will be at the Research Institute all day, so the atmosphere won't be too serious. Brother, how about pairing a deep gray suit with a light blue flowing shirt?" "No tie. The atmosphere will be slightly more lively tomorrow." Shunkei removed the massager and glanced at me, his expression calm and collected. "You may arrange it as you see fit." After touring the Kate Research Institute, we awaited the legal department to draft the contract in preparation for signing. Shunkei granted us a day off. One of the senior brothers, with whom I share a good rapport, invited me to assist him in selecting a gift for his girlfriend. I recalled that Shunkei was in need of cufflinks to complement the suit he would be donning tomorrow, so I decided to accompany him. After nearly 3 hours of deliberation, I finally settled on a pair adorned with sapphires. My companion, who had been sitting alongside me in the VIP room, seemed almost numb from the prolonged experience, yet he was still taken aback by the price. "Xiao Shen, you are being rather sycophantic towards President Shen," he remarked. I merely smiled at him and requested the sales representative to engrave the initials of Shunkei on the back of the cufflinks. On our way back, a gentle rain began to fall. In the hotel lobby, we encountered Shunkei, who had just returned from outside. I presented him with the cufflinks, and while he was engaged in a phone call, he casually tucked them into his pocket. When my senior and I emerged from the restaurant after our meal, Shunkei was still on the call. Raindrops fell softly as he stood by the lake, exposed to the elements, his hair and clothing soaked. As my senior and I sought an umbrella to offer him, Shunkei abruptly ended his conversation. With one hand, he retrieved the cufflinks from his pocket, glanced at them briefly, then closed the box and tossed it into the lake before departing from the other side. My senior instinctively glanced at my expression, and though I was unsure of how I appeared, I knew it could not have been pleasant. The lake, though not vast and the water not deep, took me 3 to 4 hours to search before I finally located the cufflinks. My senior suggested we call for assistance, but I declined. Reluctantly, he stayed by my side as I searched. Upon finding them, I realized I no longer desired them. I felt an overwhelming fatigue, as if I had climbed numerous mountains and was now utterly exhausted, only to discover even higher and more treacherous peaks lay ahead. I handed the sapphire cufflinks to my senior, saying, "Thank you for accompanying me. I took a long time to choose these cufflinks. Consider them a token of my gratitude." The following day, a new assistant arrived. He paired Shunkei with a sleek black suit and a charcoal gray blazer. Shunkei quickly regained his imposing demeanor, and I, after casting a glance in his direction, quietly positioned myself at the back of the line. After the Collaborative Research Institute concluded their presentation, it was our turn to take the stage. My senior, looking rather dapper in his suit, commanded attention as the sapphire cufflinks sparkled under the lights with each gesture he made while speaking. Suddenly, Shunkei turned to look at me. I averted my gaze, turning my face towards the window. From that moment until the end of our business trip, we did not exchange a single word. Upon returning home, The research institute and headquarters were in separate buildings, making it difficult for Shinkei and me to cross paths. At home, I also made an effort to avoid encounters with him. One day, as I opened my door, I unexpectedly came face to face with Shinkei descending from upstairs. I instinctively retreated into my room. Shinkei lingered at the end of the corridor for about half a minute before his footsteps echoed once more. It wasn't until Shinji summoned us both to the hospital that we finally met again. This time, Gu Shang and the Gu couple were also present. "Xiao Su has arrived," Mrs. Gu exclaimed, grasping my hand with an air of maternal praise. Shinji declared, "Your Uncle Gu and I both support your union with Gu Shang. Let us choose a date for your engagement." Gu Shang draped his arm around my shoulder, saying, "Su, I promised I would make it happen." The Gu family agreed to involve the Shin family in the research on pheromone disorder syndrome. In addition to the project, Shinji decided to grant me 10% equity to bring into the Gu family. "A few days from now, we will hold an engagement banquet," Shinji said with a benevolent smile, reminiscent of a caring father. Mrs. Gu chimed in, "Yes, at that time our two families will sign the contract together. A double celebration." I instinctively glanced at Shinkei, who appeared to be watching a farcical performance, scoffing before turning away. Shinji called after him, "Kei, please have the legal department draft the contract promptly." Shinkei turned back, his eyes filled with derision, directed towards the Gu family, Shinji, and towards me. "Dad, if you wish to use your illegitimate son to curry favor with others, so be it, but I am the executive director of the company now." Shinji, infuriated, hurled a cup of water from the table in Shinkei's direction. My mother rushed to seize Shinji's hand, her eyes filled with pain and pleading. "Please, stop," she implored. Shinkei stormed out. The union between the Gu and Shin families proceeded as planned, with nearly every prominent figure in the capital receiving an invitation. However, as the days drew near, the Gu family suddenly had a change of heart. They found an Omega with 100% pheromone compatibility with Gu Shang. This Omega was the recently reclaimed sole heir of the Zhao family, Shen Yu. No, he should now be referred to as Zhao Yu. The entire Zhao family fortune far surpassed what Shinji had promised. Moreover, Zhao Yu was pregnant with Gu Shang's child, and it was rumored that a gender test had already indicated a 70% probability of developing into an S-level alpha. The engagement banquet proceeded as planned, but the spotlight shifted from Gu Shang and Shin Su to Gu Shang and Zhao Yu. Shinji became frantic. The Zhao family was, by chance, Shinkei's maternal family. The elder Zhao was his biological grandfather. When Shinji's wife was pregnant with her second child, Shinji had been unfaithful, even brazenly confronting her. Shun's mother, already suffering from depression, tragically took her own life by jumping into the sea, taking the unborn child with her. The elder Zhao harbored a deep-seated hatred for Shinji. If the union between the Gu and Shin families succeeded, Shinji would never hope to secure the research project on pheromone disorder treatment. "Useless," Shinji spat, struggling to rise from the bed, slapping me across the face. My mother was nowhere to be found, leaving me to endure the blow. Shinji, in a fit of rage, pointed a finger at my nose. "I've given you equity. You can't even keep an alpha who was already fond of you. What use are you?" He berated me for over half an hour, striking and scolding me until he collapsed back onto the bed, ordering me to leave. Upon returning home, I crossed paths with Shin Quebec. I stepped back, allowing him to enter first. Shinkei scrutinized the injuries on my face for a long moment, yet remained silent. What was there to say? We were destined to be adversaries. In the dead of night, I was awakened by the shrill sound of my phone alarm. The hospital called, reporting that Shinji was in a fury over my mother's disappearance and requested my presence. I dialed my mother's phone, and while it connected, no one answered. I hastily threw on a jacket and rushed over. The deep winter night was frigid to the bone. I barely had time to confront Shinji's wrath as I searched for my mother while calling her friends for updates. No one had seen her or knew her whereabouts. In sub-zero temperatures, I felt as though I was on the verge of madness. As dawn broke, Gu Shang, having heard the news, rushed out from his engagement banquet to find me. "Su, it's going to be all right. I promise I will help you find your mother," he assured me, opening the car door in an attempt to provide me warmth. However, a CD slipped out from the side of the car door. On it were images of my mother, blindfolded and bound, suspended at the edge of a cliff. This place, I had seen it in a photograph in Shinkei's study. The image depicted him, his mother, and his grandfather, set against the backdrop of the seaside, his mother's favorite place, and the site of her eternal rest. With red-rimmed eyes, I silently seized the car keys and stepped outside. Gu Shang grasped the car door, preventing me from leaving. Su, where are you going? Wait for me. I'll call someone immediately, he urged. In a fit of rage, I picked up a baseball bat from the passenger seat and struck down on Gu Shang's hand. As he recoiled, I pressed the accelerator, driving away. My speed increased, and a tempest of anger threatened to consume me. The Zhao family. What audacity! All schemes. All rationality. Let them be damned. All I desired was to annihilate the Zhao family. As I approached the Zhao residence, my car was intercepted by Gu Shang's associates. He forcibly pulled me from the vehicle, and I retaliated with a punch. Shinsu, you need to wake up. The blood at Gu Shang's lips was glaringly vivid, and I managed to calm myself just a bit. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was an unfamiliar number, and I eagerly answered. Second young master. The madam is with me now, so do not worry. It was Jiang Sun. A sigh of relief escaped me, but shortly after, my vision blurred, and I fainted again. 10. I awoke once more in the hospital, where Gu Shang stood with his back to me on the balcony, engaged in a series of phone calls. I needed not to listen closely to know that it was merely his parents, the Zhao family, and Zhao Yu. Sensing my consciousness returning, he hastily ended his call and stepped inside. Su, how are you feeling? Gu Shang helped me sit up and placed a pillow beneath my head. I'm fine. I wish to return home first. We'll go back after this 4-drip is done. His phone rang again, which he silenced before turning it off entirely. I, with understanding, suggested you can go ahead with your matters. Just let assistant you stay with me. Gu Shang was reluctant. I grasped his hand, reassuring him, I won't do anything foolish again. You needn't worry. Perhaps he truly had urgent business, for he ultimately left. It was only when I retrieved my phone that I learned how Gu Shang had rushed out to find me upon hearing my frantic pleas for my mother, missing even the engagement banquet. After the Shin family suffered disgrace in the capital, the Zhao family encountered a similar fate. Clearly, President Gu's heart is with Shun's second young master. What of that child from the Zhao family? Indeed, the childhood friend is the true match. Before Zhao's heir was found, he was merely someone President Gu kept around for amusement. As assistant you poured me a glass of water, he remarked, second young master Shin. President Gu is genuinely devoted to you. Rest assured. Misunderstood. I chose not to clarify, instead offering a melancholic smile as I responded. Is that so? Yes. For a fleeting moment, I fell silent, yet could not resist asking, and what of the young master of the Zhao family? Assistant, you implied. President Gu once held a fondness for him, but after the latter caused such a ruckus while relying on his pregnancy, any affection has long since dissipated. This was a subtle nudge at me. I smiled and remained silent. Unbeknownst to the Zhao family, those guarding my mother had been entirely replaced by my loyal allies. Upon receiving a disc but remaining inactive, they sent someone to remind me, if it is not yours, do not be greedy. In the end, you will gain nothing and risk what you already possess. It dawned on me why someone sought to kidnap my mother, as I stood in the rain, lost and drenched for an entire afternoon. When Shin Kei returned home, I had already intoxicated myself to a half-drunken state. The moment he stepped inside, the pungent scent of alcohol filled the air. Unlike my usual demeanor, I did not rush to greet him or attend to his needs. Shin Kei paused at the entrance, observing me for a moment before changing his shoes and entering, opening the doors and windows of the living room. The biting cold wind knocked an empty bottle off the table, causing a dull thud as it hit the carpet. It was only then that I seemed to notice his return. I lifted my reddened eyes and hoarsely uttered, "Brother." The living room was dimly lit by a single small lamp. Across the sofa, Shin Kei stood in the shadows, his face obscured. I reached for the bottle on the coffee table and began to drink. Shin Kei approached and took the bottle from me, saying, "Stop drinking. Head to your room." I obediently released my grip, yet did not rise. Shin Kei did not leave either. I looked up at him. His handsome brow was furrowed, as if he found my state particularly distasteful. I blinked, and large tears began to cascade down my cheeks. I asked him, "Brother, am I truly so useless?" Shin Kei remained silent. I did not seek his response, wiping my tears on my sleeve and continuing, "I have been reduced to a beta, devoid of any matrimonial purpose. The one I love professes affection while simultaneously entertaining others, and even on the eve of our engagement, I was replaced. I merely wished to improve our relationship, to make it at least bearable, but after over a decade, I have failed, only making you dislike me more. And my mother, I ask for nothing but her safety and health. yet I do not even know where she is. My voice trembled, and my tears felt unending. Brother, please tell me what I must do for my mother to return to my side. I clutched Shin-kei's sleeve in desperation, pleading, brother, I truly ask for nothing. I will relinquish my shares and resign from the research institute. If my mother can return safely, I will leave the Shin family with her and will never appear before you again. Brother, I implore you, please let my mother come back. Even if only for the sake of her years of loyalty and devotion to you, I beg you, spare her. I could no longer contain myself. My cries reduced to a quiet sob, the kind that comes from a place of utter humility. 11. Shun Su had always maintained a demeanor of gentlemanly composure and cultivated grace, rarely displaying such outward emotion. Shin-kei pressed his lips tightly together, rendered speechless. Should he claim that Shin Su's mother was not his doing, that he had no knowledge of her whereabouts, or that he bore no connection to this matter? Shin-kei knew he ought to say such things, yet, even if he had been unaware beforehand, was he truly ignorant afterward? The day following Shin Su's mother's disappearance, he had already traced the Zhao family. His grandfather instructed him to feign ignorance, asserting that whatever problems arose were solely the Zhao family's affair, a means for the old man to avenge his beloved daughter. Bloodshed and chaos did not tarnish Shin-kei in the slightest. What Shin Su spoke of now was precisely what he desired. Yet, for reasons unknown, his heart felt constricted, as if he were the one on the verge of tears. I continued weeping until my eyes grew dry, finally managing to stop. Releasing the wrinkled fabric of his sleeve, I stood before Shin-kei, head bowed. Brother, I'm sorry for ruining your clothes. My voice was hoarse, nearly inaudible. Shin-kei seemed to remember he could speak. Addressing me gently, I will help you find her. I nodded, murmuring a heartfelt thank you. Brother, it's late. You should rest in your room. I'll tidy up the living room. Ultimately, I did not clean, for as I turned, my vision darkened, and I collapsed into Shin-kei's embrace. The rain from the afternoon finally took its toll. I had developed a fever, my temperature alarmingly high. Shin-kei carried me back to my room. Only after he had seen the items on my bookshelf did I feel at ease enough to slip into unconsciousness. The bookshelf held mementos from my childhood, gifts Shin-kei had given me. They were trivial, lackluster things he had casually presented, or trinkets others had gifted him that he had no interest in, or toys he had been obliged to offer in front of Shinji. All of them were placed on the shelf. Perhaps Shin-kei would think me insincere if he saw them regularly, but after my declaration of relinquishing everything, those items became precious. I was merely a brother yearning for familial affection and desperately seeking my elder brother's approval. 12. The following afternoon, my mother was returned. However, she had been deeply frightened and was tense around anyone except me. Without hesitation, I signed over the shares, placing the documents before Shin-kei, and submitted my resignation to the research institute. I left behind the cards, car, and jewelry that Shinji had provided for my mother and me, taking only a few changes of clothing. Brother. I paused before rephrasing, President Shin, the cards are here. Once my mother's mental state improves, we will go to Dad to sign the divorce agreement. Shin-kei, unusually, inquired of me after leaving the Shin residence, where will you stay? I offered a melancholic smile and replied, rest assured, Mr. Shun, we do not possess keys to any other properties of the Shin family.
Sen que responded.
That is not what I meant. I suppose I shall rent a place temporarily, and once I secure employment, I will make further decisions. Shin-kei fell silent. I bowed and turned to depart. As my hand grasped the doorknob, a hoarse voice from behind me uttered, it seems you have always harbored a fear of me since childhood. I did not look back but informed him. During the spring festival in the year I first entered the Shin household, old Master Zhao visited, and my mother instructed me to bring a plate of fruit to the study for you. I overheard your discussion about my mother and me. Old Master Zhao expressed concern that I might claim a portion of the Shin inheritance, and I distinctly heard you say, Father is still young. If it is not this entrance, there will be another. Instead of allowing someone powerful to enter, it would be better to let the one occupying the position of Mrs. Shin grow up, and if she becomes restless, we can easily dispose of her. Shin-kei was rendered speechless. I opened the door but turned back to gaze at him. At that time, I was still young and did not know how to protect my mother or myself, so, being so young, I did not understand what it meant to be well-behaved, and thus I could only place myself in the lowest position to appease you, enduring any grievances in silence while retreating to my room to process everything. As I matured, I came to realize that even if I remained well-behaved and cautious, you would still harbor disdain for me, which is why I chose to go abroad. I am aware that you all resent my mother, believing she is the cause of your mother's fate. But, Mr. Shin, when my mother met my father, he claimed to be single and merely a small business owner. She had no knowledge that she was disrupting another's family. Even her marriage into the Shin family was for the sake of providing me with a better life. Mr. Shin, I know I am an illegitimate child, and you may say whatever you wish about me. She is also a victim, so please refrain from speaking of this in her presence again. Shin Kei began. That day I shook my head, signaling my disinterest in hearing more. I thank the Shin family for their care over the years, Mr. Shin. I shall take my leave. No sooner had I stepped outside the Shin residence than Gu Shang called me. He mentioned that he had several properties where I could stay temporarily. I did not decline, and after arranging for my mother to enter the finest nursing home, I moved in. I also expressed my desire to work at Gu's hospital. Gu Shang hesitated. Understanding his concerns, I reassured him, I will not engage with the core research projects of your hospital. Just provide me with a research room. The second-generation pheromone inhibitor is a topic I researched during my studies in the United States, and significant progress has already been made. Gu Shang acquiesced. I lowered my head to conceal the mockery in my eyes. Shang, you are truly kind. You are the only one willing to assist me now. Gu Shang gazed at my smooth, slender neck, his blood rushing as he wrapped his arm around my waist, seemingly intent on doing something more, but fortunately, Zhao Yu called just in time. Gu Shang looked at me with a guilty conscience, yet I remained gentle and considerate. It's all right, you may go. Su, I will come by often to keep you company. How amusing. It was once certain that he would marry me, and now it had devolved into a promise of frequent visits. Was I to be kept as a mistress? I feigned ignorance and continued to engage with Gu Shang in a delicate dance of pretense. Second young master, Yujun Villa is not an appropriate place. Do you need me to help you find another? Jiang Sun inquired over the phone. I declined, as Jiang Sun proceeded to discuss more pressing matters. Second young master, today, Mr. Gu and the young master of the Zhao family obtained their marriage license. I scoffed as expected. Gu Shang is also an ambitious alpha. He will not relinquish the opportunity to claim the Zhao family's resources. Spread the word that the second-generation pheromone inhibitor is nearing successful research, but do not attach my name to it. When Shinkei asks you to investigate, then inform him that it is a project I developed independently. Understood, second young master. Once Shinkei becomes aware, you may then disclose my involvement at Gu's hospital to Zhao Yu. Alright. Jiang Sun acted swiftly. Within a couple of days, the news of the second-generation pheromone inhibitor had spread like wildfire throughout the city. On the third day, Zhao Yu came knocking at my door. Shen Su, you truly possess remarkable cunning. Young Master Zhao, I am at a loss as to what you are referring. Zhao Yu, having played the role of a young master for a few days, had shed his previous meek demeanor. He now exuded an air of arrogance, as if he were a completely different person. You are well aware, Shen Su, I advise you not to overestimate your worth. As a cast-off of the Shin family, do not presume to contend with me. I dropped my facade. Young Master Zhao, Gu Shang is fond of me, and I cannot help that. If you possess any capability, then prevent him from seeking me out. You, Zhao Yu's face turned pale with rage, and I leaned in closer, lowering my voice. Young Master Zhao, you may not be aware, but during your bouts of morning sickness, prenatal checkups, and sleepless nights due to pregnancy-related breathing difficulties, Gu Shang was in my bed. You shameless wretch. Zhao Yu pushed me away with force, raising his hand to strike me. Before I could grasp his wrist, someone else seized him first. We of the Shin family do not require your guidance. Shinkei released Zhao Yu's hand and stood before me, declaring, come with me. In a state of alarm, Zhao Yu called out, cousin. The term cousin momentarily disoriented me, and it took a few seconds for the reality to sink in. Mr. Shin, I no longer have any ties to the Shin family. My expression darkened, a stark contrast to my earlier defiance. Zhao Yu, in a fit of frustration, exclaimed, cousin. He was not like this a moment ago. Shinkei displayed no affection for a cousin he had just acknowledged, brusquely telling him to leave. I lowered my gaze. Mr. Shin, young Master Zhao is with child. Please take him back. I have work to attend to and must be on my way. Shinkei grasped my hand, preventing my departure. Father wishes to see you. I ceased my struggles and muttered a low "oh." En route to the hospital, I requested to return home to change into a different outfit. Shin-Kei's vehicle turned into the Yujun villa where I resided. Gushang allowed you to stay here? Shin-Kei's countenance grew exceedingly grim. I feigned ignorance. Is there an issue? Shin-Kei, with a somber expression, forced out a response. No, nothing at all. Yujun Villa, as its name suggests, was not a respectable place. It served as a haven for wealthy individuals to keep mistresses in the capital. Upon arriving at the hospital, Shinji appeared to have forgotten the previous instance where he had struck and scolded me, greeting me with an amiable smile. Little Sue, come and try this. We just had fresh sea shrimp flown in today. Shin-Kei subtly shifted the platter of shrimp in my direction. I hesitated before setting it down. Shinji inquired, is the preparation not to your liking? I recall you adored shrimp. I replied sullenly, Father, I am allergic to shrimp. It is Mr. Shin who loves them. It is my elder brother. The atmosphere turned awkward. Shinji quickly masked the discomfort. Then let us not eat that, we shall have something else. After the meal concluded, Shinji, having played the doting father long enough, finally broached the topic. Little Sue, return to the Shin Corporation. Your brother and I have discussed it thoroughly. You will retain the 10% equity, and upon your return you will join the board. Without a moment's thought, I outright rejected his proposition. Shinji waved his hand. I have yet to finish. The Zhao family has overstepped their bounds this time. I have already taught them a lesson. An old Master Zhao has been sent abroad for recuperation. Rest assured, I will send someone to protect your mother. Protect? Surely this was a guise for surveillance and control, a tactic to compel my return to the Shin Corporation. Shinji sought to remedy his own ailments, while Shin-Kei aimed at the immense profits from the pheromone inhibitors. For these reasons, Shinji cast aside his dignity while Shin-Kei disregarded the Zhao family. I couldn't help but feel amusement. I should have anticipated it. They are father and son, inheriting a lineage of cold-bloodedness, selfishness, and a complete lack of moral boundaries as their guiding principles. I reverted back to being the obedient and understanding son, and my younger brother quietly replied, all right. Upon my return to the Shin family, Shin-Kei severed all ties between me and Gushang. Gushang attributed everything to Zhao Yu, and with the old man Zhao sent abroad, he found himself devoid of support, reverting to his former flirtatious ways. He even brought people back to the home he shared with Zhao Yu. Zhao Yu, overwhelmed with anger, suffered a miscarriage. The Zhao family's offshoots, sensing an opportunity, swarmed the hospital, demanding that he relinquish his remaining shares. Yet, Gushang showed no remorse and continued to indulge in a life of excess. I seized an opportunity to present Zhou Ruan, who had fallen ill, before him, and Gushang was enamored once more. Shin-Kei appeared to have truly let go of his grievances, no longer concealing our relationship within the corporation. He even took me under his wing, personally guiding me through various management matters. After I independently handled several significant issues, the board members no longer looked down upon me. In return, I sold the patent for the second-generation inhibitor as a stake in Shin-S company. Now, Shin-Kei held 15%, I had 12%, and Shinji also possessed 15%. A project in America encountered some complications, prompting Shin-Kei to travel abroad for resolution. I personally escorted him to the airport, maintaining the same gentle and respectful demeanor as before. Just before he boarded the plane, he handed me a box containing a sapphire watch, expressing his concern that he might not return in time, and thus presented me with an early birthday gift. I extended my hand, and Shin-Kei smiled, removing the watch from the box and fastening it upon my wrist. I gazed at it earnestly for a moment before sincerely saying, "Thank you, brother, I truly adore it." Shin-Kei leaned in closer, gently pinching the nape of my neck. As soon as he boarded the plane, I, accompanied by Jiang Sun, surrounded the hospital where Shinji was staying. I entered Shinji's room, holding a vial of reagent. Unaware of my intentions, Shinji greeted me with a smile. "Xiaosu, what brings you here today?" I placed the reagent before him. Shinji asked, "What is this?" "Father, this is a treatment for pheromone disorder syndrome." His previously relaxed expression vanished, and he lunged for the vial. I raised it just out of his reach. "Give it to me." Shinji attempted to rise from the bed. The people I brought restrained him back down. It was then that Shinji grasped the gravity of his situation. "Shin-Su, think of your mother." "Father, my mother is well, currently vacationing in Bali, and I've arranged for several robust alphas to accompany her." "Where is Shin-Kei?" "I want to see Shin-Kei. He has just boarded a flight to America. You will have to wait until he returns." Shinji glared at me with resentment, Unfilial child. Father, there is a shareholder in the group willing to transfer all his shares to me in exchange for this vial. Out of our father-son bond, I came to you first. Shinji retorted, you wish. I refrained from uttering another word and turned to leave. Shinji couldn't hold back for more than 3 steps before calling me back. I will give you 5%. No more. What a coincidence. That shareholder offered me the same amount. Shinji gritted his teeth. 6%. I turned away with the 30% from the Zhao family. I would consider it. Shinji's face registered surprise, followed by defeat. Fine. As I exited the room, I heard Shinji murmuring behind me. Xiao Su, I once treated you sincerely. Does your sincerity hold any significance? I turned back. Father, the Gu family has never researched the second-generation pheromone inhibitors, nor do they have any projects on treating pheromone disorder syndrome. It was I who spread the false information after returning home. Shinji's face turned ashen. I felt a sense of satisfaction. Upon Shinkei's return, everything had settled. I already possessed 12% of the shares, and with the 6% from Shinji and the scattered shares I had collected, I now held 20%. I had become the largest shareholder of the group. When Shinkei came to find me, he was weary and dusty. Brother, I called out to him but fell silent thereafter. Shinkei scrutinized my face as if seeing me for the first time, examining me intently for a long while. He inquired, when did this begin? I found myself at a loss for words. Shinkei strode towards me, and Jiang Sun stepped in front of me. Step aside, Shinkei commanded, attempting to take action, but I blocked his hand. Jiang Sun, please leave us. Jiang Sun hesitated. Second young master. I shook my head, and he reluctantly departed, glancing back repeatedly. I lowered my head and tugged at Shinkei's sleeve, as if still trying to appease him as I once did. Brother, just landed? Shinkei gazed deeply into my eyes. Isn't it your shareholders' meeting that you convened? I inhaled deeply and met his gaze. Brother, I wish to take over your position as executive director. If possible, I will purchase the shares you hold at the highest market price. The suppressed anger in Shinkei's eyes finally surfaced. Delusional. What if I exchanged the Zhao family's shares and old man Zhao for it? Shinkei's pupils constricted. Are you threatening me? I shook my head, brother. I am merely returning the favor. I paused, lifting my hand to unbutton my shirt. Shinkei's cold gaze remained fixed on my actions. However, upon seeing the scars that marred my body, his expression shifted. I pointed to the scar near my heart and said, Brother, this scar is from a bullet wound inflicted during an assassination attempt in my first year abroad. This one is from a burn caused by a heated iron during a kidnapping in my second year. And this, once riddled with needle marks. Brother, there are many more similar scars on my body. Would you like to see them? For the first time, I looked earnestly into his eyes, wanting to discern whether they held disgust, hatred, or schadenfreude. Yet there was nothing. I could never read Quebec. He remained silent for an extended period, raising his hand as if to touch me, but I stepped back just as he was about to make contact. I continued, brother, when I went abroad, I only wished to excel in my studies, to acquire the ability to survive, and then bring my mother over. Later, I envisioned marrying a like-minded beta and adopting 2 beta children, living out my life in simplicity. Brother, it is not that I covet the Shin family. Rather, you have never afforded me a chance to live. Shinkei spoke with difficulty. It is not me. I know it is the Zhao family. I smiled lightly, putting my shirt back on. I have never held you accountable. Brother, the meeting is about to begin. I will head over first and you should join us soon. Shinkei grasped my hand, the sapphire watch reflecting light into his eyes. He asked, does it hurt? I tilted my head to look at him. Brother, you shouldn't be asking me this before the meeting. Exposing a weakness is a fatal error. Shinkei did not release my hand. I placed my other hand over his, gently extricating myself from his hold. I replied, it certainly hurts. Over time it will heal. The shareholders' meeting commenced as scheduled. Shinkei stepped down as executive director. I attained what I desired and fulfilled the promise I made to Shin Quebec. Epilogue. Senke. The first time I met Shin Su, he was not yet 6 years old. He stood in the living room with his mother, his eyes bright and clear. He was impeccably clean, exuding the scent of books, not at all resembling someone who had just emerged from a poor neighborhood. Shinji urged me to call him mother and younger brother, but I ignored him, discarding the cup in my hand as I ascended the stairs. Initially, Shin Su was unafraid of me. He enjoyed following me, watching me, and striking up conversations with me. Subsequently, he ceased to initiate conversations with me. Each time I approached even slightly, he would retreat like a startled rabbit, carefully observing me from a distance. Yet, whenever I expressed a desire, he would promptly come to my aid. Shinji facilitated his transfer to our school. The circle is quite small, and the affairs of the Shin family are common knowledge. The students in his class began to mock and isolate him. I was aware of this, yet I chose to disregard it. My mother had recently passed away, and I even found a sense of vindication in it. Upon returning home, Shun-su trailed behind his mother, circling many times before finally expressing his wish for a pendant. His mother, newly married, was hesitant to ask Shinji for it and urged Shun-su to focus on his studies instead. Shun-su opened his mouth several times, ultimately saying nothing and obediently ascending the stairs. I casually plucked a synthetic stone pendant from the curtain, deceiving him into believing it was an emerald. Shun-su was overjoyed and remarked, "Brother, thank you. When I grow up, I will surely buy you an expensive gift." Unfortunately, I discarded his gift. That day, my grandfather called to inform me that Shinji intended to transfer 10% of the shares to him. I thought to myself that he was indeed up to no good. Later, I sought out his senior to attempt to repurchase the cufflinks. The senior informed me that, although the cufflinks might not hold much value in my eyes, Shun-su had spent 3 hours selecting them and had searched for them even longer in the frigid lake water. When he emerged from the water, he was trembling violently, his fingers cut and bleeding, yet frozen to the point that no blood flowed. The senior refused to sell me the cufflinks, stating, "Mr. Shin, not everything can be bought back with money." On the day of the Gu family's alliance, I publicly declared him an illegitimate child in front of him and his mother. The moment I saw his face drain of color, regret washed over me. Before I could even apologize, his mother was kidnapped. I thought to myself that he would never forgive me. Upon returning home, I expected him to scold or strike me, but instead he merely wept and pleaded with me. That night, I sat by his bedside for a long time. Shunji's injuries from being beaten had not yet healed, and his wounds were soaked with tears, red and itchy. Even in sleep, Shun-su would occasionally raise his hand to scratch. After applying medicine to his wounds, I held his hand to prevent him from moving restlessly. Finally, Shun-su grew quiet, his tousled bangs falling delicately over his forehead and eyelashes, appearing obedient and docile. In my presence, he had always been well-behaved and compliant. I thought that once he healed, I would allow him to return to the corporation. It was far better than being deceived by that scoundrel Gusheng. However, he was remarkably astute. The long-standing challenges of second-generation pheromone inhibitors and pheromone disorder syndrome were resolved by him. He was indeed impressive. Upon my return from a business trip, I found I could no longer influence him in any way. I felt anger, but upon seeing his numerous injuries, I felt a sense of relief, grateful that he was still alive. If he desired those things, I would let him go. My grandfather fell gravely ill after being intimidated by his people abroad and could no longer return home. I sold the Zhao family's shares, intending to develop abroad. Shun-su accompanied me to the airport. I declared, "I will not concede defeat." "Suit yourself," he murmured while lowering his head to retrieve my boarding pass. "Brother, if you release my mother, I will show a moment of compassion, but if you dare to return, I will be far harsher than your grandfather." I took the boarding pass and promised, "Very well, I likely won't return." Shun-su proved to be exceptionally talented. Under his stewardship, the Shun Corporation flourished even further. At a social gathering, I encountered a shareholder from Shun's company who, under the influence of alcohol, remarked that there was someone who bore a striking resemblance to me by Shun-su's side, almost mistaking him for me. The shareholder inquired why Shun-su had brought someone so similar to himself, seemingly to irritate him. Shun-su responded that previously he had been submissive, and the original had been ousted, so he had spent money to hire a stand-in to vent his frustrations. I asked the shareholder if Shun-su was absent this time. The shareholder shook his head. "Young Mr. Shin never travels to the United States for business." Later, I had business in Germany, and just as I was about to leave, someone informed me that Shun-su was also in Berlin. I learned of his hotel and took a taxi there, wanting only to catch a distant glimpse of him. It was snowing when he emerged from the hotel, holding an umbrella. In a fleeting second, he got into a car and drove away. I remained motionless, standing for quite some time until a passerby reminded me, prompting me to shake off the snow and turn away. Shun-su stood behind me, having also been there for an unknown length of time, his black umbrella covered in white snow. Clearly intentional, he smiled and said, Brother, what a coincidence. I was just heading back to the hotel for a hot cup of coffee. Would you care to join me? The end of the text. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to our next story together.